everyone, and welcome back to Liz Sews and the next installment in Vlogmas 2020. Today's video will be a project log of creating this sumptuous quilted bra over here. This bra was inspired by Ying of the TaylorMade shop. She had made a very similar white version for Baragas 2020, and I'd absolutely adored it ever since first seeing it, and I couldn't wait to make one for myself. I've chosen to use aubergine lingerie satin that I purchased from the TaylorMade shop to make this bra. Unfortunately, this particular color is no longer available from the TaylorMade shop, but I've gone ahead and linked them down in the description box below, as there are numerous other gorgeous colors that you might be able to use to make a similar looking bra. The lace is backed with the pecan sheer cuff lining from Bra Builders. The pecan sheer cuff lining is similar to my skin tone and allows the lace to appear as though it's floating on the top, even though it's backed with a lot of rigidity and structure. Now, this is the first time ever doing a quilted bra, so I'm sort of working it out as I go along in this video, but I think it turned out pretty good. The pattern utilized is the Black Beauty bra from Emerald Erin Sews. Again, linked down in the description box below. I've used the pattern as written, with the only exception of removing the power bar. So let's dive in to making this quilted bra. Okay, so I did put a poll on my channel about whether the top lace of this cup should be black or purple, and right now I have a 50-50 tie. So I'm just gonna get started on the bra and get as far as I can without knowing what that top cup piece is, and then I'll check back in on it then and see what we have. So I'm going to start out with the quilted lower portion of the cup. So for the foam itself, I've cut out foam with all of my seam allowances removed. So normally when I'm working with cut and sew foam, I would leave the seam allowance in along the wire line right there, because that's the only place where it actually connects to the bra. However, in this sort of quilted design, obviously the foam is going to be attached directly to the fabric itself, so it's already like secured into place. So I don't need it in the wire line. And honestly, having foam in the wire line is sort of tricky to deal with, so I'm always looking for ways to sort of reduce bulk there where I can. So I took my regular pattern piece and obviously just cut off all of the seam allowances, so everything that's in yellow there, and that's what gave me my foam piece like this. So the next thing I have to do is quilt it, and I'm not sure if the quilting is going to reduce the size at all, so what I did is cut out large, like sort of swaths of fabric. I'm going to quilt it onto the fabric, and then I'm going to cut out my pattern piece after the fact. That way, if I get any sort of reduction in size, then I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to turn my satin over with my wrong side facing up, and I'm just going to use some like double side wash away tape for now to keep the foam in place so it's not moving around while I'm trying to quilt it. So this stuff it's not hugely tacky, but it's enough to just keep it in place while you secure it with something more heavy duty like stitching. Okay. And once you wash it in the washing machine, all of this gunk and goo sort of like goes away. It's a little bit rough on my needle, so I don't like to use it a ton, but just a little bit like this shouldn't be a problem. So just gonna put that in place and then sort of put my foam on there. So now you can see the foam just stays into place while I'm sewing, so I don't have to worry about it shifting or moving or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that on my second side as well, making sure that I am getting mirror images of the foam, right? I wanna make sure that I have a left and a right side, because it would be awful to go and quilt this and realize that we've done two identical lower cut pieces. Okay. So we have that, and I watched Ying's sort of Insta video on how she went about this sort of quilted design, and the thing that I saw was really, really interesting is she did her first line by following the edge of some tape, and then once that first line is into place, you can use that as a guide for all of your future lines. So I'm going to go ahead and follow her lead. So I'm just going to tape this into place. So obviously this tape will come up when we're finished. It's just to get that first initial straight line in there. So now I have the cups quilted in the first direction, so I just need to go ahead and do it in the opposite direction as well, and then we'll be finished. So far I'm really enjoying how this looks. I think it looks really, really cool. So from the first time through, I did find that the tape stuck really hard, so I'm going to go ahead and sort of like working on my skin a couple times just to remove some of that stickiness so that it doesn't stick as hard. And then let's see, how do I want this to go? Do I want them perfect squares like that? More angled. I think I want it more angled. So obviously I'm quilting this in just the diamond pattern design, the same as the original, but you could probably quilt this any way you want. You could probably do some free motion quilting. Essentially you're just using the cut and sew foam as your batting and going from there. And I'm going to try to make sure that I get the cups pretty similar, so I'm going to try to copy the angle that I put it on there. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch in the second direction and come back. This is so cool. I am positively giddy over this. I think the texture that it brings is just amazing. So I definitely am going to try this some more on some other bras. So the first time having done this, I would say that if I had it to do over again, I might use my seam gauge guides on my presser foot to sort of get a wider distance between here. So what I did is I lined the side of my stitching up with the edge of my presser foot, and then I moved my needle all the way as far away from it as it could possibly go. But I think that if I had to do it again, I would probably want something a little bit wider. But I do think this looks really, really cool and interesting. And obviously I've left all of my thread tails on here, so it looks a little bit like a shaggy monster, but of course that's all going to be trimmed away. So now what I'm going to do is sort of bring out my original pattern piece and try to lay it on here so that it's centered, and then I'll cut around the purple fabric. So the reason, like I said, the reason I'm cutting out the purple fabric now is because I just wanted to make sure that if it shrunk at all while I was quilting it, that didn't then translate to my cup size, so it gets smaller. I wanted to make sure I still maintained the same cup size. So the cups I've cut out, I didn't do a perfect job of centering my pattern piece on there, so this seam allowance is much shorter than this seam allowance. It doesn't look like it shrunk all that much, so I think next time I do it, I might just cut the pattern pieces out instead of doing like the larger piece like I did this time. So while I was doing that, I went and checked YouTube, and it looks like black is winning right now by 2 votes. So I went ahead and cut out the black lace for the uppercut. And then when thinking about my lining, I'm actually going to line my black lace in some sheer cup lining that is closer to my skin tone, because I want to be able to see the detail of the lace. I think a lot of times people forget that it's better to use your skin tone as a lining, because then it's just sort of like disappears completely and you actually get the full impact of the lace. If I put 2 layers of black sheer cup lining behind it, you see that you don't really get to see any of that lace detail anymore. You still get the texture from the lace, but you sort of lose the detail. So now I'm going to start assembling my cut pieces. And the first thing that I do is I cut my sheer cup lining for this on the fold along the neckline here. So it's actually 2 layers, and you have the fold that's going to go on the neckline. That way I don't have to finish and off any of my edges up there. I can just leave it as is. So what I'm going to do is I pin my lace to my lining, because I want to make sure that the lining isn't sort of peeking out beyond, further than any of the lace bits. So I do that to keep it into place. And then I can go ahead and I'm going to sandwich this with my lower cut pieces. So I'll put my quilted satin lower cut piece sandwiched onto here, and then I'm going to do a black lining piece sandwiched on the back. So now that I've basted my quilted portion to the right side of the cup, I'm going to turn this around to the inside and pin baste my lining to the lining side of the cup. Okay, so now that everything is pinned into place, I'm going to bring this over the machine and sew on here. So ideally, I want my stitching line to be just on the outside of the cut and sew foam. I don't want to be sewing into the cut and sew foam at all. That will give me the flattest seam and sort of like the most cohesive look to it. The reason I'm putting a lining in here, it doesn't necessarily need a lining because it has the foam, but I was just worried that like this texture might be uncomfortable against the skin, and you know, excess rubbing against all of those stitching lines might be a little problematic on them. So this way, all of those stitching will just be like enclosed inside of the bra cup. So just gonna sew these up. So once it's sewn into place, you can just flip everything out to the right side, and you can probably take out these pins, keeping the uppercut pieces together. So normally at this point, I would top stitch along this curve to keep everything in place, but I don't really want to put any more stitching there. So I think all I'm gonna do is just take my lining piece and maybe baste it in at 1/8 of an inch around the bottom wire line curve just to make sure that it stays down. I don't know, it really feels like it needs to be sewn. Yeah, maybe I'm just going to sew a line of top stitching around that curve just to keep everything flat. So I've just gone ahead and top stitched around there. I was worried it would like look weird with the design, but I think it's okay, and it definitely helps that seam lay a little bit flatter in the bra. So now that the cups are done, I can go ahead and put together all of my frame just like normal. So now it's time to just drop the cups into my frame. And just like this cross cut seam here, I kind of want to make sure that I'm only working with fabric in the seam allowance that attaches down here. I don't want to be sewing into cut and sew foam at all, just to reduce the bulk. That's why we took off all of the seam allowances off of the foam before starting. So I'm just going to pin this plate into place and sew it, and then of course we can just get on to elastics and finish it up. Okay, she's all done, and I think this might be my most favorite bra I've made. I know I say that a lot, but in my defense, it's always true at the time that I say it. Yeah, this is just really, really stunning. I love how the quilting section turned out. I think it looks awesome in the purple. It looks very like regal, and I think the black lace looks good with it, especially since they went ahead and used black findings and all of that. This one is a winner. I definitely am going to have to revisit this again and definitely try it in some other fabrics. I hope you guys have enjoyed this project log, and I will see everyone next time. Take care.